If you're tired of living for applause instead of purpose, subscribe now, because today we break the chains of validation. Validation is weakness. Not because connection is wrong, but because dependence is. The moment your peace depends on someone clapping for you, you are no longer free. The moment your confidence rises and falls with comments, likes, praise, or approval, you have handed your power to strangers. And strangers are unstable rulers. They cheer today and criticize tomorrow. They love you in one season and forget you in the next. Yet you keep performing. You keep adjusting your personality. You keep shrinking your truth. You keep polishing your image. All for approval that fades by morning. Stoicism teaches something brutal and liberating. If your identity is built on external validation, it is built on sand. And sand cannot carry weight. So in the next few minutes, we strip away illusions. We expose the addiction. We confront the fear beneath it. Because until you stop craving validation, you will never meet your strongest self. If you want to become unshakable, subscribe now, because this truth will challenge your comfort. The hunger for validation is quiet, but it controls lives. It hides behind ambition. It disguises itself as confidence. It whispers, just prove them wrong. It whispers, show them you're better. And suddenly your life is no longer about growth. It is about performance. You work harder not for mastery, but for recognition. You speak louder not for truth, but for applause. You post not for expression, but for reaction. And without realizing it, your worth becomes a scoreboard. Numbers define your mood. Attention defines your value. And when the attention disappears, so does your stability. This is why validation is weakness. Because weakness is dependence. And dependence on unstable things guarantees unstable emotions. The Stoic refuses that trap. The Stoic builds worth internally. Quietly. Steadily. Without witnesses. If you're done chasing approval, subscribe now, because freedom begins with indifference. Indifference does not mean you don't care about people. It means you don't let their opinions control your self-worth. There is a difference. Stoicism teaches that the only true good is virtue, your character, your discipline, your integrity. Everything else is external. Reputation is external. Praise is external. Criticism is external. And what is external cannot define you unless you allow it. The moment you understand this, something shifts. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop trying to be understood by everyone. You stop reshaping your personality for acceptance. You begin to move with calm certainty. Not because everyone agrees with you, but because you agree with yourself. And that agreement is stronger than applause. If you crave respect more than attention, subscribe now, because this is where strength is built. Attention is loud. Respect is quiet. Attention is temporary. Respect is earned. When you chase validation, you chase noise. When you chase discipline, you build respect. And respect starts within. You cannot command respect from the world if you secretly despise yourself. You cannot demand loyalty if you betray your own standards. You cannot expect others to value you when you trade your authenticity for approval. This is the hidden cost of validation, self-betrayal. Every time you silence your opinion to fit in, you fracture your integrity. Every time you act against your values to be liked, you weaken your foundation. And slowly you lose yourself. If you want power over your emotions, subscribe now, because validation feeds insecurity. Insecurity is the soil where validation addiction grows. You seek approval because you doubt yourself. You seek praise because you fear inadequacy. You seek attention because you feel unseen. And instead of building internal strength, you build external dependency. But external approval cannot heal internal doubt. It only masks it temporarily. The moment the applause stops, the doubt returns stronger. Stoicism teaches self-sufficiency of the soul. It teaches you to sit with your insecurities and strengthen them through action, not attention. You build confidence by keeping promises to yourself. You build certainty by enduring discomfort. You build worth by living virtuously, not by being praised for it. If you are ready to stop performing and start becoming, subscribe now, Because truth is heavier than image. Performance is exhausting. You monitor your words. You adjust your tone. You filter your opinions. You edit your personality. And for what? For acceptance from people who may never truly know you. The Stoic understands that authenticity costs popularity, but buys peace. And peace is priceless. When you stop performing, you breathe differently. You walk differently. You speak differently. You no longer calculate reactions. You simply stand firm in your character. Some will dislike you. Some will misunderstand you. That is the price of independence. But independence is worth the cost. If you want to be feared by fear itself, subscribe now, because validation is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of criticism. Fear of isolation. Fear of not being enough. These fears push you to seek validation. They make you conform. They make you compromise. They make you hesitate. But Stoicism teaches that fear shrinks when confronted. The worst that can happen if someone disapproves of you is discomfort. Not death. Not destruction. Discomfort. And you are strong enough to endure discomfort. Once you accept that, validation loses its grip. You stop fearing opinions. You start fearing self-betrayal instead. If you're building a life that doesn't need applause, subscribe now, because silence is strength. Silence is powerful. Moving without announcing. Winning without boasting. Growing without broadcasting. The validation addict needs witnesses. The Stoic does not. The Stoic trains in silence. Suffers in silence. Improves in silence. Because real growth does not require an audience. When you detach from the need to be seen, you become dangerous in the best way. Focused. Grounded. Stable. Your energy shifts from proving to improving. And that shift changes everything. If you want to master yourself, subscribe now, because the crowd is unstable. The crowd changes daily. Trends shift. Opinions evolve. Standards fluctuate. If your identity depends on public opinion, your identity will constantly shake. But when your identity depends on discipline, nothing external can destabilize you. Stoicism reminds you that control is internal. You cannot control applause. You cannot control criticism. But you can control your reaction. You can control your effort. You can control your character. And that control is enough. If you seek lasting confidence, subscribe now, because validation is a temporary drug. Praise feels good. It releases warmth. It boosts ego. But like any drug, its effect fades. And when it fades, you crave more. More likes. More compliments. More recognition. The cycle never ends. Unless you break it. And you break it by redefining your source of confidence. Confidence should come from competence. From discipline. From resilience. From integrity. Those cannot be taken from you by silence or criticism. They are earned internally. If you want freedom in 2026 and beyond, subscribe now, because dependence is invisible slavery. When your mood depends on other people's reactions, you are enslaved to their opinions. They control your emotional state without even knowing it. One negative comment ruins your day. One ignored message ruins your confidence. One comparison ruins your peace. That is not strength. That is captivity. Stoicism teaches emotional independence. It teaches you to value your own judgment above the noise of the crowd. Not arrogantly, but rationally. If you're ready to walk alone when necessary, subscribe now, because strength is often solitary. Detaching from validation may isolate you temporarily. Some people will drift away when you stop performing for them. Some will feel uncomfortable when you stop seeking their approval. But growth is not always social. Sometimes it is solitary. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is misunderstood. And that is okay. Because the person you are becoming is stronger than the loneliness you fear. If you want your standards higher than your ego, subscribe now, because ego feeds on applause. The ego thrives on recognition. It wants to be seen as superior. It wants admiration. It wants praise. But ego is fragile. It shatters under criticism. The Stoic builds character instead of ego. Character does not need validation. It stands firm whether praised or ignored. And when you build character, your self-worth stabilizes. If you desire peace more than popularity, subscribe now, because peace requires detachment. Peace comes when you stop measuring your life by reactions. When you stop refreshing for approval. When you stop comparing yourself to others. When you stop chasing acknowledgement. Peace comes when your standards become internal. When your growth becomes private. When your worth becomes self-defined. If you are done being controlled by opinions, subscribe now, because your mind deserves sovereignty. Sovereignty means self-rule. It means your emotions answer to you, not to the crowd. It means you decide your value, not strangers. It means you move with conviction, not permission. Stoicism is not about coldness. It is about control. Emotional control. Mental control. Identity control. If you want to respect yourself deeply, subscribe now, because self-respect replaces validation. Self-respect grows when you act with integrity even when unseen. When you keep your word. When you endure discomfort. When you refuse to compromise your values for approval. And self-respect is stronger than praise. Because it does not fade. If you are building strength quietly, subscribe now, because strength does not beg. Strength does not beg for recognition. It does not demand applause. It does not perform. It simply exists. Solid. Grounded. Calm. When you detach from validation, your presence changes. You speak less but mean more. You move less but accomplish more. You react less but understand more. If you are ready to reclaim your power, subscribe now, because power begins within. Validation is weakness because it hands power away. Independence is strength because it pulls power back. And when you reclaim your power, your life changes. Your confidence stabilizes. Your focus sharpens. Your discipline deepens. If you want to be remembered for character, not performance, subscribe now, because the Stoic path is different. Character outlives applause. Integrity outlives attention. Discipline outlives popularity. And when the noise fades, only character remains. So build that. Protect that. Strengthen that. If you are choosing strength over approval, subscribe now, because this is how leaders are forged. Leaders do not beg for validation. They operate from conviction. They accept criticism without collapse. They accept praise without addiction. They stand firm in storms of opinion. And you can become that stable. That grounded. That unshakable. Validation is weakness when it defines you. But freedom begins the moment you define yourself. And from that moment forward, you stop chasing applause and start building power.